Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm just going to do my review of the Disney live action Snow White. I saw this yesterday, which would be March the 20 something or other of 2025. So I'm a little late on getting out my reviews, but I just finished my MA in journalism, so I am now free, more free anyway, to do my reviews again and get back onto the channel and do more things with my channel again. After a brief hiatus once more. But okay, let's get into my Snow White review. Do bear with me. I need to read and look like a little old man with my glasses, but I also need to read from my notes because there's a lot of notes and I have not got the memory to remember what I wrote down. In regards to certain things, you'll see. Okay, so first thing, this is directed by Mark Webb, who's prolific. He's done so much, and I really can't find fault in Mark Webb. I think the film itself looked beautiful. The cinematography was absolutely amazing. It just felt happy and warm. Feelings brave and true. But it felt good. It was pleasant on the eyeballs to watch this. However, where the fault I think lies as to why this film doesn't work wholly is probably with Erin Cresta Wilson. And those of you may know her, she wrote The Girl on the Train, and I absolutely loved that film. Imagine my surprise when I found out that one of my favourite films, The Girl on the Train, was written by Erin, and then she does Snow White. So you're thinking we're in good hands here, and for most of it we are. But for I think a lot it falls flat, I think, unfortunately. And I don't think anybody acting in the film can save the story elements. And I think too often maybe it's overlooked that it's actually down to the writing. If something isn't working on screen, TV, film, or whatever, who else can you blame other than the writer? But I think to start with, in Cresta Wilson's favor, there's a really good, strong opening 30 to 40 minutes here. And in the beginning, we're in the kind, fair kingdom. Snow White's parents are alive. What I It was funny actually when I was watching it. I watched it with my cousin, and I turned to her and I was like, "Oh, okay. Why are we singing? Why is the little family together singing a song?" I was like, "Do we need this? This is not really. I mean, it's setting up the fact that Snow White had a nice childhood for some of it, and I get that's important. But I'm like, that could have just been said through little montage images. A whole like nearly 3 minute song, I think, in the end, between them and the villagers singing, and I don't think that worked as well. And at one point, Snow White, the young kid, is like giving a flower crown, like a flower wreath, to this little girl who's meant to be like the peasant and poor, and the king and queen are like, "Oh my God, we love our daughter. She's so kind because she gave like this little girl a flower wreath," which then Disney bites you in the ass with later on in the film. It was hilarious. But anyway, what we're missing here in the opening 30 to 40 minutes is the Wishing Well song and the One song from the original. And I think here is the first big mistake of the film. Um, we'll get into it. But Rachel Zegler here as Snow White, I think, is good. I'm not gonna care that she's not white as snow. And they did a workaround, and I turned to my cousin and I was like, oh, this is how they're gonna do it. Instead of her being like a skin as white as snow, she's just born in a snowstorm. So they were like, man, we're gonna call her Snow White because she was born in a snowstorm, and that fixes around her ethnicity. Not that there should be a problem with it. And I know some people have a problem, but at the end of the day, 2025, it's probably time to move on past that. However, Rachel Zegler, as we all know, has really done to film and herself dirty with those infamous variety and extra interviews. But actually, let's just do them right now. We'll get into them right now. So I'm going to start with, because we're on about Snow White here and Rachel Zegler, and they're linked together in this film, obviously. So we're going to start with, and I'm reading here from my notes. So Rachel Zegler had an infamous variety interview where she said, and we all know she said this, so quote along with me, she said, "I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White who's not going to be saved by a prince." And Rachel Zegler is absolutely correct in the fact she's not saved by a prince, because no, this film makes her be saved by a thief. A Robin Hood thief bandit, a mixed mash of Robin Hood and the Princess and the Pauper, as my cousin pointed out to me. And that is a weird message to send to kids that, Disney in 2025 or 22 when they wrote this, or whatever they wrote it when this interview was in 2022. But it's really weird that Disney in 2022 to 25 is like the messages, oh, for little girls or boys or whatever. you know, you could fall in love and be saved, but if it's by a prince or a man with good morals and good values, no, no. But if the guy is like a thief and a bad person, oh, fuck it, fall in love with him. He's the good one. He's the one to fall in love with. What kind of message are we sending people here that if you're a bad person and you steal things, you deserve true love and you deserve to be loved? I, I mean, everyone deserves love. If you steal things, sometimes it's necessary. I get that. Robin Hood, case in point, but this was really weird as a move for Rachel to say this. And it's quite funny. She's like, this is weird, weird. We're not going to do that. And then she's like, you acted in this. What the hell are you talking about? You're sat there telling everybody that this film is absolutely not going to be, and we wrote it. I mean, sorry, where's Rachel Zegler's screenplay? Where did she write it? Where did she absolutely sit in the writer's room and sit there and write? Because she did not. So she absolutely wrote nothing. Helen absolutely wrote something. Thank you. She goes on to say, also here, this is funny, as we all know, Rachel says that this is not going to be, Snow White is not going to be dreaming about true love. And again, as I said, then what the hell did we watch? Because she absolutely dreamed at one point about falling in love with Jonathan, which is the Prince Florian character. And we have that weird Tangle-esque love song, The Hand in Hand, or A Hand in Hand. We'll get onto that later, but we watched the same thing. Maybe her acting was, you know, maybe she just didn't realize what she was acting because obviously they film it all out of sequence. Maybe she just forgot what she acted in. And speaking of weird, Rachel Zegler also said in the infamous Extra interview that there's a big focus on her love story in the original one, and that's a problem for Rachel in 2022, that the original Snow White focused on love as a 14-year-old girl, as a teenage 14-year-old girl in a historically medieval time period where 14-year-olds, it was normal. Unfortunately, in this day and age, it's unfortunate, but back then, in the medieval times, 14-year-olds were mothers and were raising kids because they had come into bloom with their puberty and having periods, which meant their body was ready for kids. And obviously back then people thought that was acceptable, and 14, 13, 12 year olds were being married and having kids, and that was the norm. So at 14, Snow White's dreaming of love because, you know, she's trapped in a castle with an evil witch that doesn't like her, and then the prince comes along, and she's a princess, she knows she's a princess, and a prince comes along and she dreams about true love with a prince. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that narrative. And I know it's 1937, but even in 2025 now, are we saying people are not allowed to dream about love? What is wrong with dreaming about love? Love is one of the best things you can have in the world. And to kind of shoot that message down, knowingly knowing what she's acted in, which is the exact same love story. What? And honestly, what I would say was weird. Weird is anybody, gender, it really doesn't matter on gender, but anybody breaking into somebody's house and taking a nap in their bed. That's what I would say was weird and stalkerish. You know, Snow White comes across a cottage and she's like, this is not mine, but I'm going to go sleep in there and break into these people's houses. What? How is that like acceptable for Rachel and Disney in the modern age? But like falling in love is weird, and being stalked is weird by someone who's a prince who is not stalking her in the original film anyway. Really weird. And also here, Rachel in the Extra interview said that there's an inner journey to find herself. So Snow White, by Rachel's mind, is having an inner journey to find herself. But I ask, where exactly does that come into play, that she has an inner journey to find herself? She does not much in the film. She really has no agency again in the film, and ends up going from A to B through the help of everybody else, who are mainly men, and then ends up defeating the queen in a really lackluster way. But we'll get on to that. But overall, though, as I've slacked Rachel off now and the character Snow White in this film off, well, playfully, I actually would state I actually like Rachel Zegler. I think she is an amazing actress, and I'm glad she's still getting work, and I hope she continues to get work, but learns from her little hiccup, shall we say, about the press tour that she did. I mean, the latest press tour is seeming to be going well online. I mean, she looks great, she's talking very well, so I guess she's learned her mistake back in 2022. So that's a good thing. It means that she's acknowledging that she made a boo-boo and doesn't want her career to end horribly. I'm sure it won't. She's great. She's an amazing singer, great actress. I think she's going to go far and continue to be around for a long time, and I'm on board with that. So I do not have a problem with Rachel. I think she's great, before anybody starts to be like, you don't like Rachel because she's whatever. No, I like her. She's good. Right, moving on to the next bit. Gal Gadot's Evil Queen. let's just be real. It was camp. She was camp. The actions were overacty. There's a trend going on right now as of March 2025, where people are being a little mean to Gal Gadot and her acting range. And this is obviously linked to the political climate we're in. At least with the trend that is going around that Gal Gadot has no acting range, I thought that it was quite funny that she is in this movie and her acting skills subpar, subpar, weird, subpar. I like Gal Gadot. I think she was great in Wonder Woman. I think most of us thought she was great in Wonder Woman, and that film made loads of money. And she was good in it, although her acting is a bit flat. Her acting is a bit flat, and we can say that. But here, she takes her flat acting to a camp level and becomes this camp, flat, evil, witchy queen. And it's funny, but at some points of the film, I'm wondering if I'm laughing with or at Gal Gadot. But I don't want to be laughing at Gal Gadot. But unfortunately, I think I was. And on the note of her being so overly camp, I mean, her musical song that she got was so theatrical and such a musical. It came out of nowhere. It took away the campness, the singing, took away from the fact she's meant to be this evil queen that people are afraid of because she's spinning around with her maids and her, her men and her soldiers, and they're all spinning around having a little dancey dance together, and she's like really evil and big and bold and woohoo, and singing about all is fair and blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, your camp. And the crown, the costumes, as you could see around me, let me just put little examples around me. Camp, camp. Okay, moving on, we'll go to Andrew Burnap, who plays Jonathan. Okay, as an initial thought with my notes here, I just wrote why and then thoughts. So here's my thoughts on why. They don't want Prince Florian. It's 2022 to 2025, and princes are out, and people can't be saved by Prince anymore. Fair enough. But at least if you're going to do that, give your female lead agency. Otherwise, we're just doing nothing, really, are we? Which is what happened. But yeah, no, Jonathan, who is meant to be Prince Florian, I think is a confused mix between Robin Hood, Princess and the Pauper, and trying to be Florian. He is also trying to be a bit of Flynn Rider. Let's put that there. He's a mix of all these people, and overall, oh, and you know what he reminds me of a little bit? Jack in the Beanstalk from Into the Woods. Like, he's got all these character elements that are really reminiscent of other people, so his own character portrayal gets lost, I would say, because I'm watching him and I'm thinking Robin Hood, Princess and the Pauper, Jack and the Beanstalk, this just, who is he? And Flynn Rider. He doesn't feel like Prince Florian in any way, which I guess was Disney's whole want and being to not have Prince Florian be in this film at all, even though he still is, and the same love story is still within this movie, which is very confusing. As I say, he's a confused Robin Hood, and really he adds nothing to the storyline. Where he works best is when it's the original storyline, where he, saves Snow White and kisses her, and they have a little bit of a love story. But because it's so forced, and because it's coming off the back of Rachel's infamous interview, where she was like, "Oh, Andrew's scenes can all be cut," and that's Hollywood, baby. It's like, I'm. Do you like the man? Does he like you? And then I'm watching the story, and I'm like, they're trying to be in love, but I just know too much about what everyone said about this movie to fully enthrall myself in the fact that this is meant to be a love story. That it feels too forced, and he cannot, at least in my opinion, I don't think he could sing. The songs he did sing were lackluster, and we'll get into the songs. There's a whole section on songs, but I don't think he was good. Okay, moving on. Dwarfs in this. We got the Hi Ho song, but it was upgraded. It said like only a few of the seven being named, like Bashful and Happy, and they're like, he's happy, we know, or he's bashful, we know. Like that was their little cliche to shoehorn into the Hi Ho song that was already perfect to begin with, and when it started, me and my cousin were like, "Yay, it's the Hi Ho song," and then it just kept getting weirder and weirder with the, he's bashful, we know, and it felt like the Smurfs. If the Smurfs live action in 2015 and whatever year it was, if they were singing a song together, it felt like that. So that was really childlike. Other things I think about the dwarfs were not good. The fact they're CGI, that's not good. And Dopey, who is mute, in the original one, he's mute. Here he speaks, and here he talks, and here he whistles. But I know he whistled in the cartoon too, and that worked because it was like a voice to someone who couldn't speak because they're mute. But to go from that, and it's funny in the age of representation where everybody needs to be represented, Disney cares more about CGI fake dwarf beings, and then and casting a heroine who's got to be fearless, brave, love, royal, true, and basically Katniss Everdeen. In the age of that representation, does the representation of mute people and the little people community, that doesn't count for nothing anymore. We don't need to represent those groups because we're trying to represent CGI groups or strong heroine leads who aren't strong heroine leads in a movie that plays pretty much exactly the same, with the only additions being pointless. So that was really weird. Also, here's a really weird change, everybody. The dwarfs kick Snow White out of their cottage. And that's not after finding her sleeping in their bed, although they almost did in the storm. They nearly threw her out and were like, get out, we don't know you. Especially Grumpy, who was bandwagon #1 leader of getting her out the film. And so they're like, you could stay for one night because it was raining and they felt sorry for her, I guess. But then the next day, as they go off to work, there's no cute little Snow White stays and they kiss and they sung together in the morning, and then they went off to work and they were like, you gotta pack your stuff and leave. And she's like, I'm gonna pack my stuff and leave. What? Why? That takes away so much from the relationship Snow White has with the dwarves and how she's so kind that everybody can't help but fall in love with her, and that's how she's so fair, and that's how she defeats the evil queen, and why the magic mirror is like, she's fair because people can't help but love her and want to help her. And in this one, so to some extent we get this, but there's too many people who are pointless, and even the dwarves to some extent become pointless because it's so rammed, this film, with random extras, that nobody seems to love Snow White either, and she only demands her attention when she whistles, and she's like, be nice to each other. And then everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll be nice. But is that down to her as Snow White, or is that down to the fact she just whistled at them and none of them have a backbone to tell her to shut up? So that was a weird choice. I did not enjoy the dwarves kicking Snow White out and this modified relationship that they had at all. I just thought that didn't work well. However, I think the cleanup song was good. It was charming and it was whimsical and it was a joy to watch on screen as a live action adaptation. But I just can't help thinking if these were actually little people actors, that maybe it would have worked well. And the last thing I'll say on the dwarfs before we get into them later on is what's coming up. But they magically transport themselves at the end of the movie to the castle. They're just there. They're just magically there in the castle, and it's like, okay, why are we magically there? There was no, and that was just the third act, and we'll get into the third act problems later on in this review. But the fact they were just sort of in an Avengers lineup style, like there's one, and then all the rest of them were there, and they were just like, because the queen turned around to like, oh, I'm surrounded by absolutely no one with any power to defeat me, and they're like, we're gonna stand here, and we haven't been shown how we got here, but we're here nonetheless. So somehow we've gone past every guard in this castle, and they've all just watched us stand in this courtyard and gather, and nobody's done a single thing. Really weird, really weird. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the changes that were made in this movie for the live action version compared to the other one. So there's no authentic love story. There is a love story. I don't feel it's authentic. And there's no wishing well song, as I said, or one song to help really capture the romance that was authentic in the original. The evil queen here does not die the same way at all. This is a spoiler review. I should have probably said earmarked that at the beginning. Whoops, my bad. This is a spoiler review. She no longer dies from getting toppled off the cliff by animals and squished by a boulder, which I think would have been pretty cool to see. They don't do that here. Instead, they have her sort of Snow White and the Huntsman-esque, have her get like turn all dark and cracked and then break like glass, shatter, and then get sucked into the magic mirror. And it's unclear whether she is dead or not, or if her magic is so imbued to the mirror because she's been using it for so long that she's now just a part and she'll be the next face. And, Snow White will be like, magic mirror on the wall, and then the evil queen's face, the stepmom's face, just appears like, fuck you, bitch. So I don't know if that's what will happen there. Prince Florian, as I've touched on, no longer exists. He's in it as Jonathan, but Prince Florian, who he is as a person, is gone. So that's a change. Dopey can talk, as I mentioned before, which I think is another bad change. That is a change of this modern movie. Dopey now speaks, and it's in the most cliche moment ever, when it's like the third act, Rachel's like, it's not going to be easy. Well, Snow White is like, when it's not going to be easy, we're going to have to like storm the castle and really do some work here, and the evil queen's going to give us everything she's got. And the movie's silent, and then it pans to Dopey, and he's like, let her try. Like, oh, shut up, you're meant to be mute, stop speaking. And of course, here another massive and stupid and confusing change made is Robin Hood and his merrily pointless men. Why are they there? And it's not just men, I think it's one woman as well, and it's just really pointless. But now let's quickly talk about these merry band of misfits and stupid people that are pointless to the story. Do you remember in 2023 where Daily Mail broke a big headline, and they said, at least in the UK, I don't know if the Americans got it, but in the UK, the Daily Mail was like, Snow White and the seven politically correct companions, and I'll show this as I'm speaking. They reported that in 2023, and they said, it was quite right wing leaning, and it was like woke, and that they assumed from a set picture that got leaked that the dwarfs were now all the tall people and the one little person, and mixed ethnicities and very diverse, right? So they just assumed that that was who the dwarfs were going to be. And then what was really funny about that was that the Direct then reported on that and said that Disney issues a statement on fake, controversial photos allegedly from Gal Gadot's Snow White movie. Well, there's nothing alleged about what the Daily Mail reported. In fact, Disney and the Direct gaslit everybody into thinking that these characters weren't a part of it. The trailers do not include these band of merry men, who are the actual people that were in that original set leak photo. And Disney claimed that they were not real and they were made up and it was false and these people were not even in the movie. And they said that the Daily Mail had, captured an image from a movie that wasn't even their live action Snow White. How on God's earth name can you say that whilst they are fully in the movie? I turned to my cousin. Oh, it's my cousin. She's not made up, I swear. I turned to my cousin and I said to her, oh my God, they're in the movie. And she didn't know about it. So she was like, what are you on about? And I couldn't, as we were watching the film, explain it. But how can you tell the Daily Mail that they're incorrect? I mean, they were incorrect in the fact that it was not the Seven Dwarfs because they're CGI, but they're in the movie. And to pretend they're not in the movie, to issue a statement saying that this is a false allegation, these alleged photos are alleged and they're not real, but they are real, they're in the movie, and they add nothing and it's pointless. So that was a really bad choice, and I thought, it just adds furthermore to the absolute chaos that this movie and its media response has been. And we also, to add further to the drama of this movie, Peter Dinklage came out and commented on made his comments, and I can put them around me, how it's like so backwards that representation's important, but then we're going to have loads of dwarfs live in a cave. So, I mean, has Peter Dinklage seen the film? They don't live in a cave, they live in a beautiful cottage, and they're brothers, and they're magical beings. So what does he want them all to all have like wives and characters and stuff? It was fine that they're dwarves living in a little cottage together as brothers who mine the mines. There's nothing wrong with that. That's like saying The Hobbit is a problem with all the dwarves being men and the fact they don't have wives and they're all a band together, in the... Anyway, I digress. And recently, as of 4 days ago, at least for me and my timeline of life, Sky News reported that little people actually feel erased by Disney's use of CGI instead of real actors. So Peter Dinklage says this is setting little people back. The film comes out, they've used CGI, now little people and the little people community are like, we would have liked representation on screen. So thanks to listening to one egotistical man, a lot of people lost acting jobs and careers that could have spawned from this. And I think that's ridiculous. The whole movie is ridiculous in an essence, to be fair. Especially since the CGI worked, I will give it credit, it did work, but it wasn't mind-blowing where I was like, this is great, they really should have stuck with CGI from the get-go and never even bothered to try and cast little people. Not to mention the only little person actor in the whole film can't act for shit, adds nothing to it, and it's ridiculous to watch, and quite frustrating to watch. Anyway, let's move on now to the songs. This is the song portion of the review. Weird. Okay, what songs do I actually think worked? Well, surprise, there's three of them that I think worked in this film. That's Waiting on a Wish, which is the new one. It was in the trailer. It's Snow White's song, and honestly, it's great. I keep listening to it because I think it's great. It makes me smile now talking about it. It was good. They did good. I will accept this Snow White. song, Waiting on a Wish. Good. Hi Ho, as much as I mentioned my issues about like he's bashful, we know, he's happy, we know, he's sleepy, we know. It is still nice to see Hi Ho in the parts where it is Hi Ho and it's like reminiscent and like, oh, childhood. And on that note, Whistle While You Work, also very good. And as I say, whimsical and charming and just a joy to watch. But what songs did not work? Good Things Grow, which is the title of the song that the mum, dad, and Snow White sing, the King and Queen, the Fair Land. It went on too long. It didn't really add much, and they could have established that they were she had a nice childhood with a fair king and queen in a way easier way that wasn't a song and a dance. All Is Fair, which is the Evil Queen's new song and only song. Well, she does a reprise of it later on, which is equally as bad. And in the wrong moment, her reprise of All Is Fair. Well, hang on. All Is Fair, anyway, as I've mentioned, was really camp, very theatrical, very musical theatre. And I like musical theatre and I like camp and I like that. But whilst you're watching a movie about Disney Snow White and you're thinking the evil queen's meant to be evil, I'm laughing at her, not with her. And it was camp and ridiculous. And I was like, why is she just singing to all her servants? And why is she singing to the guards? And she's going to kill the huntsman now, but she's not 'cause she's going to send him to the dungeon. And nothing's really happening again. And we're just watching Gal Gadot, who can't sing. Bless her. Bless her cotton socks. She can't sing. And I'm pretty sure somebody else's voice is mixed in there too, anyway, to hit those high notes. But again, with Disney, I'm finding at the moment their modern songs, like maybe it's a thing with Disney movies from, the 90s and earlier. Well, even Tiana was actually great and Tangled. So from 2010 backwards, you know, when you heard the songs for the first time, you were like, oh my God, this is great. I want to listen to it again. And it feels like that doesn't happen anymore with modern Disney films. I guess Encanto worked best as the most recent one because some of those songs are like, yeah, I really like them. At least for me, the new Moana 2 film, apart from the one song, I was like, the rest of these are boring. Wish has crap songs. And then the new ones here all fail to even be reminiscent. I don't even know what they sound like. The- I just remember not enjoying them when I was listening to them. Mufasa had this problem as well. All the songs in that film were crap, at least in my opinion. And I was like, every time they started singing, I was like, oh God, give me a break. But like here, All Is Fair, I think could have worked if this movie was like really fun and camp. And I guess to some extent it's meant to be really fun and camp. But whilst Rachel's out promoting it as like Snow White's gonna be brave, fearless, true, and a leader to the people, I'm expecting something more like Disney's version of Snow White and the Huntsman, but we get Disney's version of Snow White. And it's very camp. Okay, and the next one of the song list is Princess Problems. I don't even think I need to talk on why this doesn't work because it's insulting to princesses, it's insulting to women who enjoy being girly and have no problem with falling in love and being girly and having, a princess feel about them. And they make a whole song about princess problems. It's not really insulting princesses to some extent, it's more just the Robin Hood character, which is Jonathan, Prince Florian, is like, oh yeah, must be so hard being you because you're a princess and all of your princess problems, even though we all know she's been a slave and not really had that princess experience. But it was boring. I don't think it worked. It was trying to be quirky, but I don't think it came off. It was trying to be like Frozen with Anna and Hans's like little sandwich song or whatever, Love is Open Door. It's trying to be like that quirk level, but I don't think they achieved that. And last one is Snow White Returns. That's what it's called, and that is the moment where she rocks up in the third act and everybody sings in her face, and then she defeats the queen through doing nothing. And I don't think that song worked either. But I will say what song here could have worked was A Hand Meets a Hand. It felt very Wicked, and in parts, again, me and my cousin were talking about this. Some of the soundtrack, if you listen to it when you watch Snow White now, when it comes on streaming, or if you go again to the movies or cinemas, pictures, or whatever, listen to the strings almost identical to the Wicked instrumental soundtrack. Like how Wicked strings ebbed and flowed, and the sounds of those swelling moments in the romantic parts, almost identical here. And A Hand Meets a Hand was very reminiscent of I'm Not That Girl from Wicked, really reminiscent here of that. And also Tangled, At Last I See the Light, when they're in the little boat with all the little lanterns around them. It was a mix of those two, and it could have worked, but it was the wrong movie. It was reminiscent of Wicked and Tangled instead of Snow White, and I think that could have been replaced in that moment with one song, or when they sing the one song rather than this new song. So I think it could have worked, almost worked, but I don't think it does because again, I feel like the love story feels forced. in this movie. Now, that is down to, as I say earlier, Erin Cresta Wilson. And as I said earlier, for someone who wrote The Girl on the Train and adapted the screenplay of that, I meant, because she wasn't the writer of the original book, but she adapted the screenplay, I'm disappointed in her writing ability for a second and third act. As I say, it was a really amazing, strong opening for 30 to 40 minutes. The second act and the third act, So we're going to go with, I would say, trimming the fat of the second act. And what I mean by that is this. The Merry Men, or whatever that was meant to be, take them out. Robin Hood's Jonathan Force storyline, take that out. The shoehorn love story between Robin Hood, even though he's not Robin Hood, but Robin Hood and Snow White, just take it away. Either keep it in and keep it true to the original story where it worked, or don't even bother with it, as Rachel said. Also, there's a pointless first fight scene in this second act with the Queen and the Queen's Guardsmen. So this is where Snow White and the Merry Men and Robin Hood, Jonathan, all band together for the first time, and they're like, "Run away, princess," and she's like, "I'm not gonna run away. I'm finished, brave and true," and blah blah blah. And then they do nothing, and they're like, "Spread out, fan the area, find Snow White," and it's like she's like 5 meters to the left, in plain sight. Oh, and then Snow White's just down here, like 5 meters away, hiding behind a log, and he's like, "Where is Snow White?" And we're like, right there. She is right there. You do not have to do that much work. She's right there in front of your face. Here as well, I think making both the Evil Queen and the Evil Queen's soldiers and goons incapable of doing anything just makes them a laughing stock. It's never good to do that because there's no threat in your film anymore. Your villains are laughable and stupid. So why is anybody scared of the Evil Queen? She's camp and her guards are pointless and stupid. So why are we scared at all? And the villagers defeat her later on in a song. So they could have just done that at the beginning and saved Snow White as a kid. And then the problems here with Erin's Cresta Wilson's third act is that after we do get the original storyline, and at one point I was like, are we gonna do it? Because the dwarfs are racing towards Snow White, and the Evil Queen, as the old version, was like, "I'm gonna give you this apple," and she used good manipulation tactics, to be fair, and she had the motif of the necklace, and she was like, "This is Jonathan, he told me to give it to you," and said that we're gonna go against the Queen, and that's how she tricked Snow White into eating the apple, which I think makes more sense than just saying, "Apple, isn't it good? Isn't it pretty?" She's like, really manipulating Snow White against herself, which is fair enough. I would eat the apple too, but I think that was good on Erin's part there. The fact that when we actually had the Evil Queen turn into the old hag, that scene was a song, which was a very pitiful choice. That it was the All Is Fair reprise part, and All Is Fair as a song didn't work anyway. It was too campy. But the integral moment for the Queen to turn into a hag to kill Snow White is a cheesy song again. Really bad choice there. Really detracted from the scene in every way you can think of. So that was weird. But after Snow White does eat the apple and dies, when she does die, and then needs to be saved, not by the prince, but by the thief and True Love's kiss. Weird. She then says, Snow White in the third act, "We need to take back the kingdom, and it's not going to be easy." So Erin Cresta Wilson's version of not easy is that Snow White will just randomly find a red cape from nowhere and then walk to the kingdom and directly walk to its castle gates and look at the stupid little girl that put the flower wreath on her head. And this is where I was on about earlier, where Disney needs to spoon feed its audience. I put it together instantly, two and two, that this is the older version of the little girl, right? She was the only blonde white girl in the kingdom with a blue dress, and now we've got the only white girl who's like the same age as Rachel Zegler or Snow White in a blue dress. Like, I get it, that's the aged version of the kid she gave her flower wreath to, but what was absolutely ridiculous that made me laugh hysterically was that she kept that flower crown, and what once was beautiful is now a withered, dried flower crown, and she just kept it as keepsake. She's like, "Oh, so I remember Snow White, she'll come back one day," and she just has it on hand to put on her head. And then Snow White just looked at her and she's like, "Nice, me and you, we go way back, for the 1 second we met." "Oh, okay." And then she puts the flower wreath on, and then she starts ooh and singing, and then all the villagers ooh and together, and then she sings that song, which I thought didn't work. And then Gal Gadot is like, what are you gonna do? And then she like gets her guards to reprimand Snow White and grab her by her arms, and she's like, I'm trapped now, I guess. And then she gets a dagger out, and she's gonna kill her with a diamond dagger. And then she gives Snow White the diamond dagger, and she puts it to her own stomach, and she's like, kill me, Snow White, kill me. And then Snow White doesn't, because she's obviously fearless, brave, loyal, and true, or whatever, and fair. So she's not gonna kill the queen. But the way they defeated, the way that Snow White defeats the evil queen is to name her guards. Like, you're Jonathan, you're the baker, you're William, you're the queen's guard, or you used to be like the poet, and oh, and Jack, you used to be, and Martha, you used to be, and then it's like she names people, and then they're like, you know what? You're right. I used to be a baker. I used to be a poet. I used to just do nothing. I was a farmer, and they're like, let's just lay down our swords and well, that's it. We're on Snow White's side now. So that's the third act. She sings, gets sung at, walks to the queen, does not kill her, and then names a few people. And then the whole of the evil queen's twisted soldiers that have been brainwashed to liking her and being loyal to her instantly give up. And as I say, the magic dwarfs are magically behind her, ready to do nothing, and nothing happens. And then Gal Gadot, literally, the evil queen, runs off crying after the only little person in the film uses a crossbow to shoot the dagger out of her hand. And instead of just creating another magic dagger to have another go at Snow White, she's like, and then runs off. No kidding, not even kidding. It's and then runs off and back into the castle. So everyone, Snow White's like, leave now. And you think she'd run that way past everyone who would, split for her, like the parting of the Red Sea, and go down there. But no, she runs straight back into the castle, and everyone's just like, yeah, we're going to allow her to run back into the castle that you just wanted her out of. So that doesn't make sense. And then, as I say, Snow White literally does nothing. She follows her and watches her by the mirror get cracked, turn black, and get sucked into the mirror. So I think that was really weird and honestly underwhelming as a third act. And Evil Queen's death was she dead? Is she dead? It's just not really. I mean, she probably is, but that's what we got. So now that I've bashed the film's second and third act, I should say it's only fair that I tell you what I would have done based on the fact that I do have writing qualifications, from studying TV and writing TV scripts and obviously journalism MA and so I know a little thing or two about narrative. So how I would personally fix this is that the Southern Kingdom in the third act now, right? So the Southern Kingdom rebels against the evil queen and her rule. So I would have done a flashback scene to the evil queen going to the Southern Kingdom where she curses a young Jonathan who is actually Prince Florian, right? So because she's curses Prince Florian, he and the whole of the Southern Kingdom forget that that's their prince. So that's why he's now in the forest as fighting in the king's name, his dad's name, or Snow White's dad's name, and he's actually a prince. So he's still, he got cursed to forget himself, but he's fighting the good fight because he knows deep down he's a prince. I think that would have been great. And when they kill the queen, Jonathan wakes up and he's like, oh crap, I'm the Prince of the Southern Kingdom. My name's Prince Florian. Nice to meet you all over again. And that could have been lovely. I think that could have really worked. And it would have had a nice little nod to the original one whilst keeping the same modern updated story that they wanted of him being basically Robin Hood. What else I would have changed here is that Snow White goes to the Southern Kingdom, learns to fight, learns to be that leader that's brave, true, loyal, fearless and fair or whatever. And then she becomes that fearless, brave leader of people. She gathers the Southern Kingdom. She builds an army with the dwarfs in tow, not the merry men. I'd cut them out of the film. Just keep it the dwarfs. Then they all go. Snow White can have a really cool armor, maybe an armored dress, maybe just armor chainmail, riding on horseback alongside Jonathan, who doesn't know he's Prince Florian, alongside an actual army. Now, what we could have done there is instead of Snow White getting sung at by random villagers that could have done that when she was a child to break the curse or whatever and get the evil queen gone, what we could have done is have a really epic fantasy battle using the evil queen's magic, the guards, the dwarf. They had magic in this. That was also a change that was made. The dwarf's magic could have been used against the queen. The animals could have fought for Snow White, and obviously the Southern Kingdom as an army. That could have been one epic final third act battle where there is stakes in the game. The evil queen isn't camp and stupid. Her soldiers are actually soldiers, and it would be harrowing for Snow White because the soldiers are the farmland people. So if they're taking out and killing and having a battle with the evil queen and the soldiers, she's killing her own people, but at the hope that, some die for the many. That would have had a lot more stake in the game. I would have felt more for Snow White because she would have been killing her own people to save her people. Isn't that a great dynamic? And of course, the dwarves could have used their minds. They had axes to fight. I think we could have had a really good fantasy filled magic battle at the end in that third act, which I think would have lent itself to a live action adaptation to be epic, much like Sleeping Beauty did as Maleficent's adaptation of the live action Sleeping Beauty, where we had epic fantasy battles within Maleficent. And it worked because it was good. And I think that's what they should have done here to really heighten the fantasy element in a modern age where, yes, Snow White could have been a leader and could have been that female hero who is a leader, who is brave, fearless, loyal, true, whatever, and fair, but is also actually actively has agency. She leads the people. She fights. She knows how to fight, not because she's Mary Sue type of character, because she went and learned how to fight. That I think would have been really good and made the film overall, I think, at least in my opinion, a much stronger third act. As I say, cut back the fat on the second act, so get rid of the Merry Men storyline, and this could have been a perfect live action adaptation. Overall, though, I think what we did get was okay. I was bored for some of it, but only because I didn't understand why these characters existed, the Merry Men, and why we were suddenly confusing Prince Florian for Robin Hood and Flynn Rider. We didn't need that. It didn't need to be done at all, because Flynn Rider's upcoming. There's a live action Rapunzel in the works, or Tangled in the works. So Flynn's coming up anyway, and I think that the film, while still being good in parts, where it worked best, at least in my opinion, was when Snow White's original, cartoon was adapted into live action. The eating of the apple, Snow White being poisoned, being woken up by the prince, the Whistle While You Work song, Hi Ho song, the Wishing Well, although they should have had the Wishing Well song. And I think that would have been great as well. And maybe also after like the third act, after they defeat the queen, they could have had the one song put there, either way in place of a hand in hand, either put one song there or one song right at the end. So instead of like in the original cartoon where it's at the beginning, you put it right at the end when Prince Florian realizes he's Prince Florian, and then it's like one song and then they're in love and then they can go into a wedding scene or something. I think that would have been really beautiful. She could have been still this strong leader. You could have made everybody happy. But I think that the movie fell flat in the second and third act. All of the controversy surrounding the film from the actors, both Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, which is never good when the audience doesn't like its two main leads, and Peter Dinklage really sticking his nose in where it didn't belong to make other little people lose acting jobs. All of that was really culminated into a mess of a press tour, a mess of an early press release, and it really tainted this film and put people against it, which was really bad marketing decision on everybody's parts. And overall, I think this film was beautiful in parts, was colourful, the cinematography was great, Mark Webb did no wrong, he directed a really good film as best as he could from what Erin gave him to work with. Okay, that's my review. I hope maybe you enjoyed either my review or the film yourself. If you didn't enjoy it, why did you not enjoy it? Did you like the changes that were made? What would you have changed yourself to make this better in your own opinion? All right, well, I shall see you in my next review. Bye.